Sifter for the ear.
News, interviews, reviews, cinema, TV, streaming. Action!
Hi, y'all. This is Jerry Williams, a.k.a. TV Jerry. In October, I featured the In Thrive Film Festival, which showcases the talent of incarceration survivors. They're having a pop-up event at VCU on April 2nd, and they'll also be in Abington, Virginia on May 2nd and 3rd. I'll have a link on the website for this show at tvjerry.com. Kent Eanes spent years working as a grip before he started his career as an on-set photographer for movies and TV shows. He's had cool experiences with stars like Paul Giamatti, Martin Sheen, and Rob Lowe, and he's got some great stories. Also, this was recorded in February, so some of the references reflect that. And since they don't have a TV, there's no What Were You Watching segment.
Sifter Review of the Week.
Last Take, Rust and the Story of Helena. It became international news when cinematographer Helena Hutchins was shot and killed on the set of the film Rust. This documentary starts with footage from that horrible day, then expands to cover the investigation and the ultimate completion of the film. There's video from every aspect of the case, from the first officer's body cam to police and personal interviews, including Alec Baldwin, who was holding the gun, and writer-director Joel Souza, who was also shot but recovered. The entire process unfolds with interesting insight and some behind-the-scenes revelations, while social media posts are shown to reflect public response. The other aspect of this film is the tribute to the art of Hutchins, but it only includes a few cursory clips from her previous work. This unfortunate accident also sparked renewed, careful consideration of firearms in movies, and this film details many aspects of the issue, with considered depth and slight emotion. By the way, the movie Rust has been released, but is not currently available on streamers. I gave Last Take 3.5 out of 5 stars. Kent Eanes, welcome to Sifter for the Ear.
Thank you.
You've had a varied career in the showbiz and as a photographer, and we're going to talk about a bunch of that different stuff. But first of all, how did you get started with a camera in your hands?
Probably following my father's footsteps. He was a photographer when I was growing up, so it came to me sort of somewhat naturally. I started working in the film industry for my father in 1977.
Was that Promotion Productions?
That's correct. It was a small film production company. We did industrial films and travel logs, to use an old school term.
And then, of course, you were still photographer for Style for, almost 10 years?
That's correct. I have to credit Lorna Wyckoff and Style Weekly for really inspiring me to become a still photographer as a full-time trade.
Footnote.
Lorna Wyckoff created Style Weekly and was the publisher from 1982 to 1993.
She encouraged me to go to photo galleries and photo shows, so she really put me on that path.
When I knew you, you were working locally with film productions. You were on a few of my sets over the years. How did that evolve into when you became an on-set photographer, which is a totally different kind of skill?
So when I left Style, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I went down to the Caribbean for about 5 months to sort of contemplate my navel. And while I was down there, a movie came down there. It was a NBC pilot called Trade Winds. I jumped on that. And when I came back to the States, I just continued freelancing in the film industry, mostly as a grip. But at some point, I started paying attention to the still photographer on set. And I thought, I can do that. And it wasn't an immediate switchover. For instance, I was hired to do the stills on Gods and Generals.
Footnote.
Gods and Generals was the historical drama about Stonewall Jackson that was shot here in 2002.
The producer who hired me left the show. Another producer came in. He brought his own still photographer in. And so I ended up gripping that show. So there was a little bit of back and forth there.
As an on-set photographer, don't you need some special equipment?
Yes, my camera equipment was housed inside of what was called a blimp. It's a large, bulky aluminum housing that would dampen the sound so that it wouldn't interfere with the soundtrack.
Right. Now, when you're shooting, because I know some of my experience, sometimes you're expected to shoot live while they're actually rolling, and then other times they do a setup for you. What's the most traditional on a movie set or a TV set?
For me, 99.9% of the time, I was shooting while they were filming.
Uh-huh.
When they pull people aside, that's more of a gallery shoot. And that's usually a small crew that comes in from LA and does that on the side. I'm basically shooting what the film cameras are shooting. It's either called an on-set photographer or a unit photographer, which is different from the gallery photographer who might pull people to the side.
And the gallery might be more like for posters or for something more official.
Exactly right.
What are some of the things you have to know to be, I mean, because I know you got to stay out of the way because there's cameras everywhere, there's grips, there's all kind of people everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, you just nailed it there in terms of knowing what to do. Because I had worked in the film industry for many years prior to doing stills, I knew how to work around a set. I knew where I'd be out of the way. I knew where I'd be in the shadows. I knew where I could hide behind someone from the actor's eye line, which was really important and crucial in the still photographer job. That's a nervous area to work in, the actor's eye line.
Distraction, I'm assuming.
A distraction, absolutely. And, I have seen my share of times where an actor will forget his lines and all of a sudden he'll point to something in his eye line and, boom, you're it. That never happened to me because.
Oh, darn. I was hoping you had a good story about that.
No. I did get called out once, but I was known for being stealth on camera. I had witnessed a director throwing a still photographer off of a set.
Wow.
And he was obtrusive. He was wearing a bright black and red shirt. I mean, who works in an actor's eye line wearing a bright red shirt?
Right.
He deserved to be thrown off the set. So I learned what not to do from episodes like that. I had a dozen long sleeve black t-shirts. I had black hats and I would use my blimp. I'd kind of hide behind my blimp. And when I was shooting a scene, if I was in the actor's eye line, I would not move until they called cut. No matter if I'd gotten my shot or not, I just stayed frozen. Because of my small size, I could hide really well. I once wiggled underneath a couch.
Wow.
Well, sitting on the couch, and I was shooting between their feet at a scene.
Well, I just have to comment to the people who don't know you. You're only like 3 feet 8 inches or something, right?
It was beneficial. I can't imagine being a 6-foot still photographer because you have to get into. I was once in a fireplace. I once tucked inside of a tripod underneath the film camera. I mean, I have been in some small places.
Speaking of some of those places, I mean, looking at the resume, there's West Wing, 30 Rock, The Office, and a bunch of movies. What are some of the most memorable experiences about some of those where you had to actually do that?
I really loved working on John Adams.
Footnote.
John Adams was an HBO series about the second president of the United States, played by Paul Giamatti.
It was about 3 months in the States and 2 months in Budapest. And it was just a fantastic cast and crew. I loved it when there was just good chemistry. And Paul Giamatti was just absolutely amazing. In 5 months, you're probably not going to believe this, I think I witnessed him having to re-say a line maybe 3 times in 5 months. I mean, he was a machine when it came to that. I really liked my last feature, Killing Jesus, National Geographic channel in Morocco. I had just come from a small film called Ithaca.
Footnote.
Ithaca was a drama directed by Meg Ryan starring Sam Shepard.
And I was told early on by a producer that Sam Shepard was going to have a problem with a still photographer. He didn't like still photographers, but it was in his contract. So the very first day shooting, I am hiding behind someone. I'm way back. I'm 200 millimeters, and he's a dot in the frame. And the person who I was hiding behind, they leaned to the left, and I might have leaned to the right. And sure enough, he saw me. And it's the only time I've ever been called out in all of my work.
Wow.
And he just yells out, "No stills." So I had to go to the producers. It's in his contract. A compromise was made that I would shoot only during rehearsals. In fact, on the last night, we had this scene where he walks out, stands by the street, looks down the street, looks the other way, and that's it. He doesn't have any lines. And I went up to him and I said, "Mr. Shepard, can I shoot this last scene? They're not going to do a rehearsal." He said, "Am I going to see you?" I said, "If you see me, I will give you $100. He let me do it. He didn't see me. But that left a bad taste in my mouth. And I went home and told my wife, Andrea, I said, "I just don't want to do this anymore." I said, "I'm too old and too good at what I do to be yelled at on a set." And 3 days later, I get a call from National Geographic Channel about doing the show in Morocco.
How can you turn that down?
I know. I turned to Andrea and said, "Okay, one more." And it was a long journey getting there, many flights, a long drive over the Atlas Mountains. I don't sleep on flights. So when I got there, I was exhausted. It was a Friday night. I was supposed to start on Monday. And they were shooting one all-night scene on that Friday night. I wasn't scheduled to shoot that. So I go, I put my stuff on the truck, and the publicist says, let's just walk around and talk to a few actors. And I said, oh, okay. So we started talking to some actors, and one of the actors said, well, so when do you start, Kent? And I said, Monday. And he said, Monday? He goes, tonight's a great night. He said, I get my ear cut off. He said, Judas kisses Jesus tonight. He said, you should be working tonight. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, this guy actually wants me to work. I had just come from this show where they didn't want me on set.
Right.
And so I climbed back on the truck. I drug my equipment off and I shot until about 4 in the morning. And the entire show was like that. It was great chemistry between cast and crew. And it was a great experience.
It's good to have a good final taste.
Surprise guest drop in.
Speaking of taste, someone is dropped in to say hello. I knew you were expecting somebody, but you never were expecting this person, I don't think.
Oh my God, you're kidding. That's why she's not wrangling the cats. I told her to wrangle the cats while I was here.
She had something else on her mind, didn't she? Hello, Andrea.
Hi, how is everybody?
Great. It's good to see you.
Cat-
And the
cat
cat.
in bright
I see the
red.
cat. The cat made the scene too.
Yeah, the cat's making the scene. The cat was making a noisy scene, but yeah. Hi.
Footnote.
Andrea is Andrea Levine, a local realtor who's married to Kent. Kent, you were truly surprised, right?
Yeah, unbelievable. I was getting kind of annoyed because the cats were meowing and we had agreed before I started this. I said, okay, you're going to wrangle the cats. She goes, yes. So we start the interview and the cats are meowing. I'm going, what the hell?
I was about to open the outside door, say, just go out there.
Yeah. Welcome to Sifter, Andrea. Obviously, I think people probably figured that now you guys have been married for how long now?
29 years.
Well, yes, 29 years, although tomorrow is our 30th anniversary.
Wow. Valentine's Day. You need to tell
Yeah,
that for
of
the people
course.
out there listening.
How cliche.
I think there was an interesting story about how you met, wasn't it? Wasn't it a film-based story?
Well, we were both working on Major Payne.
Footnote.
Major Payne was a comedy starring Damon Wayans that was shot in Richmond in the 90s.
Kent was gripping. I started out as an extra, actually. All we really did was say hello to each other. That was about the amount of connections that we made. But several months later, Kent reached out and said hi. And that sort of began the next phase of our relationship.
And actually, during that show, I was working with Tommy Barrett. I call him Tommy. And I said, Tommy, who is the hottie in the spandex? And he says, oh, that's Andy. And he's the only person I've ever heard call her Andy. And
Yeah.
he's
My parents.
But he knew her. And so he kind of dialed me in and filled me in on who the hottie in the spandex was.
Oh, cool.
There you have it.
And did y'all spend some time on set since then?
Quite a bit for a while. We were fortunate. I went from being a SAG extra to props department. Eventually I shifted completely out of the business and Kent was on the road and I was doing my thing in Richmond.
And that thing is real estate.
Yes, that thing's real estate.
And I think you've actually hired Mr. Eanes to be your photographer for most of your shoots. Is that correct?
He has been pretty much my sole number one, unless, of course, he has not been available or out of the country, which he was quite a bit when I was first starting my real estate career. But I would say, yeah, pretty much I've been his best client.
And of course, obviously, he's your husband. But what does he bring to the shoot?
The biggest difference, I would say, is a real estate photographer who does strictly real estate is going to come in, spend an hour, and be gone. And in Kent's instance, he'd be there for hours. And if he got back to his computer and looked and said, boy, I really don't like the shot, I want to reshoot it. I'm like, oh God, we've got to go back. And we would go back and shoot it again. And he did not shoot for anyone else.
Well, and speaking of which, let's turn it the other way around. So when your boss, Kent, says, I need you to shoot this way, or I need to see this, and you think, no, that's bad. So how do you resolve those issues before dinner?
That's an excellent question. I'm not sure if I can answer it. I think I just dug my heels in and say, well, then you just need to hire someone else.
Ooh,
Because
That's absolutely true.
my goodness. So do you have any good set stories that might be fun to tell about the two of you together?
Oh, there's quite a few, actually. Starting with the weekend we were getting married, and we were both working on Kilronan Hush, Gwyneth Paltrow, Jessica Lange film that was being shot in near Charlottesville. And first of all, the day before our wedding weekend, there's a call on the radio, and the medics are talking to each other, and everybody's saying, "Oh my God, what happened? What happened?" And, I'm hearing that a Gator, which is one of those, small RV kind of golf cart things that carry a lot of equipment, had dumped one of the crew members and equipment. And immediately I said, "That's going to be Kent." And sure enough, that was Kent. He was knocked unconscious. Luckily, he came back to and was not hurt significantly, other than, his ego probably. So fortunately on that, we were okay. And then the other fun thing that happened.
But you got married the next day anyway.
We did. And then the other thing that happened either that day or the day before on the same set was there was a wedding scene to be shot with Gwyneth Paltrow getting married. And the prop master says to me, "Walk down the aisle and just, start throwing petals all over the place." And Gaffer says to Kent, "I need to get some eye lines. I need to get some spots. I need to
The DP
check on things."
wanted
The
focus
DP.
marks.
Focus
Yes.
marks, right.
So he said, "Please go walk down." Kent is completely hyper-focused when he works. So he
I've
is
noticed that.
racing down the aisle with blinders on, not realizing, no clue as to what the setup is. I'm walking down saying, "Oh my God," because there's crew members holding C-stand arms and creating an awning for us to walk through. Meanwhile, Kent has no idea until finally it dawns on him. He stops. We hold hands. We go down the aisle. And actually, that became our real wedding photo.
Oh, wow.
And then we did get married that weekend.
And then the
afterwards.
crew passed the hat around, and we had a nice little knipple from that. And Gwyneth actually kicked in. So, Gwyneth, if you're watching or listening to this, thank you very much.
So you thought it was actually just a film thing, and it actually turned out to be kind of more of a wedding thing. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they actually shot it. We've never seen it, but it was filmed.
So Kent, what about your point of view from that crash? Do you have an excuse for why it crashed?
No, it was a dumping gator, and the mechanism unclicked, and I was in the back with a bunch of stands, and we were racing down the road, and it just dumped me and a bunch of stands, and I was unconscious for a little bit, but I came back.
Wow.
It was not cold feet, Andrea.
Fortunately, that was true.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Great to see you. Thanks for your stories.
Thank you, Jerry. A pleasure.
Bye-bye. Go tend to those cats.
Bye.
All right, Kent, since you did that one Jesus story, you want to tell us the other Jesus story?
When I was shooting Killing Jesus, we were in Morocco, it's an area that a lot of biblical movies take place. And one night I was hanging out at the hotel where a lot of cast members stayed, and there were 4 movies going on at the same time, all with a Jesus theme. And at one point, all 4 of the Jesuses were in a bar. So I can say, when 4 Jesus walk into a bar. I did not have my camera, unfortunately. I didn't even have my phone with me, but true story.
So where else have your photos appeared other than the typical movie promotional stuff?
John Adams, actually one of the photographs ended up on the cover of David McCullough's John Adams book. It was on buses. It was on the top of taxis. They had one image on the side of a building. It was like a 4-story building.
Wow.
That put that on. And then when I worked on Killing Kennedy, I think 3 or 4 images were in Times Square.
Footnote.
Killing Kennedy was a docudrama about the assassination of JFK with Rob Lowe as the president. It was shot here in 2012.
On the first day of shooting of that job, Rob Lowe was not working that day. And I was on set, and I got a tap on my shoulder, and I turned around as the producer, and he says, "Rob Lowe wants to see you in his trailer." And I never interact with the actors. I would stay clear of the actors. So I go to his trailer, and this was so smart on his part. He wanted to have control over the first image of himself as JFK. He didn't want to be photographed with an iPhone walking down the set or hanging out at craft service. So he describes this photograph to me, and basically what he's describing is what we were talking about earlier. It was a gallery shot. So as he's describing this to me, I'm thinking, okay, well, I can bring my strobes in and I can hire a couple people to help me. And I turned to him and I said, "What day do you want to do this?" And he goes, I'll be ready in 20 minutes.
I knew you were going to say that.
I played it cool, but I had a little freak out moment. I found an empty set, had paneled wood walls. I borrowed a American flag from the set dressing department. I had no lights. There was a window. Locations puts cardboard down on the floor to protect the floor, and I picked a 4x8 piece up, and that was my passive fill. That was basically my lighting instrument.
Wow.
He comes in, he knows what he wants. He's turned toward the window, and we shoot a series like this. And he said, "Do you think we have it?" I said, "I do." I said, "But just for grins, why don't we do one shot where you're turned away from the window?" He agrees to this. He turns away from the window. And on the very last shot, he crosses his arms and he tilts his head down, and I take the photograph. The next day, I bring Slex in to his trailer, and he ends up picking that last shot. And it went viral. It was at Times Square. And then a couple of days later, I get a strange email from someone that says, "Great shot, but you folded his arms incorrectly." And I said, "What are you talking about?" There is a painting of JFK. I think because when he was assassinated, they didn't do a portrait, they did a painting of him. He's standing next to a window. He's turning away from the window. His arms are folded and he's tilted down. Rob Lowe and I never spoke about this painting. I didn't even think about it. But if you look at the two images, and someone put those two images together, it's almost identical. It's almost like we had the photograph with us and I was trying to match it. It's that close.
I'll be
Yeah.
sure to post that. You sent me a copy of that picture. I'll be sure to post that on the webpage too, so people
Okay.
can see that. Did he thank you appropriately after all that?
Yeah, and he was excellent to work with. When he would walk into a room and he'd see me, poised and ready, he'd go into character even before we started filming so that I could get photographs. He was excellent to work with, a really nice guy.
I'm assuming as an on-set photographer, you're also shooting shots of the director and behind the scenes kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of crew photographs as well. And I would, hold those back and try to make a CD and pass those out to the crew at the end of the job.
Oh, that's
Because
nice.
making friends with crew is very important for a still photographer. A lot of times I'm working behind the focus puller.
Footnote.
A focus puller is also known as a first AC, who adjusts the camera's lenses to keep the subject in focus while shooting.
And all it takes is for that focus puller to lean back like 3 inches just to give me a little view there.
Now, I heard before you got into the set photography business as much you played a dead guy?
Oh, that was on Shadow Conspiracy.
Footnote.
Shadow Conspiracy was directed by George Cosmatos in Richmond in 1996 with Charlie Sheen and Donald Sutherland.
We were filming in Georgetown at an old movie theater, and the director and the DP were looking at me, and they were talking about me, and I thought, okay, this is not good. And someone comes over to me and says, they've decided to add a scene. They want to have a dead projectionist. Will you play this part? I said, sure. So the director asked the makeup person to put a bullet hole in my forehead. So we go to the trailer, which is about a block from the theater, and he proceeds to put this very realistic bullet hole in my head, an exit wound with brains coming out of the back of my head.
Great.
Charlie Sheen comes into the trailer and sits next to me, and he's looking at this and he's going, "Oh my God." Meanwhile, his assistant comes in with like a plate of spaghetti, and Charlie goes, "Oh, I don't think so."
Right.
So it's very realistic. There's blood dripping down both the front and back. And the makeup artist says, "Okay, you go ahead and go to the theater. I'll be there in a minute." I'm walking down the street in Georgetown with this bullet hole in my forehead and brains coming out of the back. I'm walking down the street like this. I finally get to the shot, and George Cosmatos says, "Okay, you got to hold your breath. You got to play dead until I say cut." And we did this several times. And the last time, I think he forgot to say cut. I'm like dying, just-
Literally.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that scene ended up on the cutting room floor, actually. I don't think it ever made the movie.
Some of these other shows, 30 Rock, West Wing, The Office, tell me, are there some interesting stories about working on any of those?
Talking about eye lines, West Wing was just one or two scenes, and it was in D.C. And one scene, we are out on a tarmac at an airport, and Martin Sheen is walking away from the presidential plane, and it's a Steadicam shot, and I'm kind of tucked behind the Steadicam operator. And as you know, West Wing was always like walking and talking.
Right.
So we're walking away, and I'm walking backwards, and Martin Sheen's walking toward us, and he keeps looking at me. And so I keep trying to hide behind the Steadicam operator. And I finally went up to Martin Sheen. I said, I'm trying to stay out of your eye line. He goes, no, on the contrary. He goes, I'm using you as my eye line. So it was the one exception of my career where being an eye line was a good thing. And in terms of 30 Rock, I worked on a couple of episodes, and the last one. And by the way, I asked the people at NBC how they got my name for 30 Rock, and they said, Alec Baldwin asked for you. I still don't know how he got my name. I think it's because he might have been friends with Laura Linney, and I worked with her on John Adams. But anyway, on the last job, it was a long day, 14, 15-hour day. And this was in New York, and I was actually going to start to drive home. So they turned the lights on, and Alec Baldwin's right in front of me, and he turns to me, he goes, hey, almost all the cast is here. Why don't we do a photograph? And luckily, I had made friends with some crew, and they turned the lights on, and we got the shot. And actually, NBC wrote me back and said, it's been a long time since we've gotten the entire cast together for a photograph. Thank you very much for doing that.
I've had the pleasure of having you on my set more than once.
Absolutely.
And first of all, I have to say, everybody they characterize you as like a border collie because you don't stay still. You keep running around. Let me do this. Let me tweak this. Let me tweak this. We finally have to say, can't stop.
Tim Reed used to say, can't telephone.
Which meant shut up, go away.
Yep. Stop.
How was working with them down? I guess you did work down at New Millennium some too.
Oh, yeah. They were very supportive, and they were some of the first people to believe in me, and they were excellent to work with.
Footnote.
Tim Reed and his wife Daphne Maxwell Reed founded New Millennium Studios in 1997 and shot films and TV shows there until 2015.
And you were excellent to work with. You're probably the most organized and efficient director I ever worked with, but you were also just very efficient. You wanted to keep us on time. It would be like, it's 11:42. We need to be on another scene by now.
Yes, I've heard that before, but it always worked out. That's the good news.
Oh, absolutely. I very much enjoyed working with you.
Well, good. And I've always enjoyed working with you, and I've enjoyed today hearing some of these stories, which I've never heard. I know you were nervous, but I think you did a great job. It was easy, wasn't it? Wasn't no big deal.
It was very simple. Thank you. And yes, I was nervous. I was considering bringing a bucket in here in case I had to throw up.
Well, luckily you didn't. Luckily for all of us, you didn't. And I want to thank you again, and we'll see you when we see you.
Thank you, Jerry.
That was Kent Eanes, who spent much of his career as an on-set photographer for movies and TV shows. I'll have a link to his website, plus some of the pictures he mentioned on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com.
Coming soon. In theaters.
Snow White. This is the next in Disney's quest to turn their animated hits into live-action films, with Rachel Zegler in the title role. The Alto Knights. The gimmick here is that Robert De Niro plays two roles, a pair of Italian-Americans who were rivals for control of a major crime family in the mid-20th century, directed by Barry Levinson. Magazine Dreams. Jonathan Majors plays an amateur bodybuilder striving to gain recognition. October Hate. A documentary about the anti-Semitism that arose after Hamas attacked Israel.
TV and streaming.
The Studio on Apple follows a legacy Hollywood movie studio striving to survive in the modern world, with Seth Rogen and Catherine O'Hara. Lockerbie, the bombing of Pan Am 102. On Max, a documentary that examines the 1988 flight with interviews of Lockerbie residents and victims' families. David Blaine, Do Not Attempt on Disney. This series features the astounding magician on a worldwide tour to find real people who do incredible things, and he tries them. Marie Antoinette on PBS. The series about the famed queen returns. Next week, we'll meet the producer of the documentary on the Blackbird, the iconic jet, one of which is now hanging at the Science Museum of Virginia. This is Jerry Williams. Thanks for listening.
For more Sifter, including literally thousands of reviews,
visit tvjerry.com.
That's a wrap.